Hey, we're doing stand-up shows October 20th through the 23rd in Florida and Buffalo. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for tickets. I don't know if this is going to be shocking or not. I guess it should be, but maybe it shouldn't. So this guy thought he was going for this guy's from Exxon, and he thought he was going for a job interview remotely. And this guy got him to say a whole bunch of stuff. This guy's from Channel 4 News in the UK. And so he got him to say a bunch of stuff about how they manipulate Congress and stuff. And let's listen. Let's listen.
To go to work.
Hi, good to see you.
How are you?
Moments later, Mr. McCoy will become one of the first ever executives to claim that ExxonMobil has aggressively fought climate science using front organizations to maximize shareholder profit.
Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes. Did we join?
We've been fighting against some of the science, and by some of the science, I mean all of it. So there they are admitting that.
Some of these shadow groups to work against some of the early efforts. Yes, that's true. But there's nothing illegal about that. We were looking out for our investments. We were looking out for our shareholders.
Hey, you don't have a livable planet, but we did make some profits for our shareholders. I hope that doesn't bother you, kids. That's the important thing. I always wondered what a job interview for evil mastermind would sound like. And there it is. Here, there's more.
When you have an opportunity to talk to a member of Congress, I liken it to fishing, right? You have bait, you throw that bait out, it's all these opportunities that you use, and to use the fishing analogy again, just to kind of reel them in, because they're a captive audience. They know they need you, and I need them.
Senators pressed to do it.
They need you. Your Congress people, they need Exxon lobbyists. They need them.
Exxon's bidding behind closed doors.
You want to be able to go to the chief. And so the chief knows you, that you can go to the chief and say, look, we've got this issue. We need Congressman so-and-so to be able to either introduce this bill. We need him to make a floor statement. We need him to send a letter. You name it. We've asked for everything.
We can now reveal the current ExxonMobil battleground and strategy.
It's big, yes. It's bold, yes. And we can get it done.
Just last week, as America continues to suffer heat waves described as apocalyptic and linked to the current climate crisis, President Biden fought to get Congress to pass his $2 trillion showpiece law, linking jobs and infrastructure to massive spending to combat climate change. On Capitol Hill, though, Exxon was also fighting to strip out spending on climate. Forget that, it lobbied. Stick to roads and bridges.
So that's a completely different conversation. When you start to stick to roads and bridges, and instead of a $2 trillion bill, it's an $800 billion bill. If you lower that threshold, you stick to highways and bridges, then a lot of the negative stuff starts to come out. Why would you?
When he says negative stuff, he means stuff like for climate change, stuff like that. That's what he means by negative. So you see what's happening. Exactly as he predicted, that's exactly what's happening in Congress. We went from, $5 trillion to $3 trillion to $2 trillion? And I don't even know if it's going to be that. And what are they? And watch what they're talking about. Hang on.
Put in something on emissions reductions on climate change to oil refineries in a highway bill. So, and people say, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So then you get to the germaneness and saying that shouldn't be in this bill.
Sure enough, last week Biden's behemoth bill evaporated. A new law may be agreed, but major green initiatives are gone. Coincidence? Or the big oil effect? Nothing illegal, just oiling the wheels of power.
Plants capture CO2.
Recent academic studies show what Keith McCoy alleges is the wider Exxon strategy. Say one thing in public, do another in private. For example, it says publicly it supports a carbon tax. Keith McCoy says privately that's just PR.
It's a talking point. that we can say, well, what is ExxonMobil for? Well, we're for a carbon tax.
And why? Because they're confident it'll never happen in America.
No, it's not going to. A carbon tax isn't going to happen. And the bottom line is it's going to take political courage, political will, in order to get something done. And that doesn't exist in politics. It just doesn't.
Exxon told us for more than a...
So remember what he said about get all that stuff out about capping emissions and putting a tax on emissions for power plants? Get that out of the bill. Just talk about roads and bridges. And they did. Here it is. Roads and bridges. Biden selling big infrastructure deal. They stopped talking about all that climate change stuff. That's all gone. Just as that guy predicted. Here it is. Here's Nancy Pelosi. Weakened and damaged infrastructure impacts every American. House Democrats work for the people. And believe me, it's time we rebuild America to ensure the airports, bridges, and roads. Here's Senator Merkley. He's talking about roads and bridges. Here's Ruben Gallego. Roads and every American wants climate change solutions, investments, and time. As we all knew, roads and bridges. Elizabeth Warren, roads and bridges. We need roads and bridges. There it is. Exactly as that guy from Exxon said. Pramila Jayapal, I want roads and bridges. There are no Republican bridges or Democrat roads. The bipartisan infrastructure deal is a win for all Americans. It's already a lose for the planet. And it's not a win for all Americans. It's a privatization deal. Elected officials can rattle off a dozen things that are in a reconciliation bill, but when asked specifically what is in the corporate written bipartisan deal, it's always roads and bridges. The truth is they don't want you to know it's all about privatizing infrastructure. We live in a rapacious oligarchy, ladies and gentlemen, and now you see how that works. Politicians don't represent you at all. That's who they represent. They represent corporate America. For many reasons, they get their funding from them, and they also want jobs with them. They also want book deals and speaking fees. That's how that all works. Wow. And by the way, for anybody keeping score, they're trying to ram through the roads and bridges bill without the spending bill. The spending bill that will help you. And well, here, let's get one more video.
Plans capture CO2.
Recent academic studies show what Keith McCoy alleges is the wider Exxon strategy. Say one thing in public, do another in private. For example, it says publicly it supports a carbon tax. Keith McCoy says privately that's just PR.
Is this a talking point that we can say, well, what is ExxonMobil for? Well, we're for a carbon tax.
And why? Because they're confident it'll never happen in America.
No, it's not going to. A carbon tax isn't going to happen. And the bottom line is it's going to take political courage, political will, in order to get something done. And that doesn't exist in politics. It just doesn't.
Exxon told us for more than a decade it's supported an economy-wide price on CO2 emissions.
We're working on ways to provide energy while addressing the risks of climate change.
Take electric cars. It's all about doubt and delay.
You're not going to be able to just switch to battery-operated vehicles or wind for your electricity. And just having that conversation around why that's not possible in the next 10 years is critically important to the work that we do.
But science is screaming at us that we do not have 10 years. Delay, doubt, deflect, the classic hallmarks of modern-day climate crisis denial. And ExxonMobil's alleged involvement in that is thus revealed from the inside tonight, straight from the horse's mouth.
Imagine if Joe Biden and the establishment media that's funded by Exxon could get you just as rabidly upset at that and their lies and they're wrecking the planet as they could get you up as mad and rabidly angry at a vaccine hesitant person. Imagine if that, can you imagine if Joe Biden wanted you as upset at that as he wants you upset as a vaccine hesitant person? Can you imagine that? They're firing 72,000 healthcare workers who are vaccine hesitant in New York and replacing them with unvaccinated National Guard. You tell me that's about health. Anyway, there you go. So thanks to Channel 4 News over across the pond for doing the work that American media will never do. Why? Because they're funded by them. So there you go. Now you know why the infrastructure bill's got all that stuff taken out of it. Now you know why it's only all about roads and bridges, and it's really all about privatization. And the Democrats are going to get wiped out in the midterms because they're not doing anything to make anyone's life any better. Keep voting Democrat, you suckers. Keep donating to Democrats. You should just go give it right to Exxon. We're doing stand-up comedy in Florida, in West Palm Beach and Dania, and then we're going to Buffalo, Baltimore, Tempe, and Portland. Go to jimmydoorecomedy.com for a link for all our tickets.